everybody to our InPower coffee break, Tuesdays from 1 to 1:30 on Eastern Time. And we invite you to come and bring your favorite refreshment and join us for conversations on all kinds of topics about surviving and thriving in the workplace. We cover a lot of women's empowerment in the workplace, women's leadership topics, but we also focus on emotional intelligence at work, how to build a pro-employee and pro-human workplace. And today we're going to talk about the importance, we're going to talk about more of a career topic, a career development topic, which is more about networking. So as an individual, how can you leverage your network to help you build your career? And we have Priyanka Komala joining us, who Mary will introduce in just a moment. And Priyanka is quickly becoming a very vocal member of our community, which we love to see. And we love to see her developing along with us and becoming part of our gift back to the world. So welcome, Priyanka. And I'm Dana Theus, by the way. I think I forgot to say that, with Empower Women and InPowerCoaching.com. We do have an open seat today, so once we get into the conversation, I invite you to come in via video or via IM here on the side and join the conversation and ask questions and share your wisdom as well. So Mary, why don't you introduce Priyanka and we'll get going on the interview.
Yes, 1 second. Let me just pull up. Sorry, I'm a little unprepared today. So, okay. So, welcome Priyanka Komala. When Priyanka was 5, she stepped on her first stage and gave an impromptu speech about an airplane. This excitement never left her as she went to become a distinguished speaker. Although she had followed the cultural expectation of getting a master's to become an engineer and technologist, Priyanka knew she wanted to make a bigger impact. She wanted a seat at the table to help others, so she got her MBA. A distinguished Toastmaster, Priyanka Komala enjoys using technology to drive business strategically. Her focus is on leadership to make impact and inspire trust. At the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering and Medicine, Priyanka is responsible for creating and delivering the web strategy and future technological direction for a $30 million division. Priyanka graduated from Anna University with a degree in engineering and ranking top 5 amongst 15,000 students in the state of Tamil Nadu, India. She holds a master's degree in computer science from American University and an MBA from the Stephen M. Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. She tries new things like yoga, dancing, and writing. Ask her sometime about how she survives hiking trips. Priyanka enjoys sharing insights on happiness, personal growth, entrepreneurship, and women's issues, and the potential of STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math, and has been featured on InPower and Hello Giggles. And you can also find her on her blog, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And she's also over on InPowerCoaching.com. Welcome, Priyanka.
Oh, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Mary. And thank you, Dana, for your kind words about how we can help each other succeed and help our audiences succeed as well.
Well, you know, Priyanka, one of the reasons that I am looking forward to this particular conversation is because, you know, you are an example to me of somebody who is taking charge of your own leadership development, taking charge of your own personal brand development. You obviously have a very important and responsible position right now, but you're not letting yourself be defined by that position. You are going out of your way to define yourself beyond that position, but in a way that helps you do your current job. And what I love about the fact that you're being vocal about it. I mean, there are a lot of people out in the world doing that, right? And it's a good thing, and we want to encourage that. But by going into Toastmasters, by doing the Network 2000, you know, mentoring group, by making these efforts to get out of your office where, you know, you do a lot of work day to day, you're not only exposing yourself to those different learning environments, but you're exposing other people to you, and you're doing that really intentionally. And one of the things that I notice in with my clients and a lot of our readers and our viewers is that it seems like it's so hard just to do your own work and then do your own development. A lot of people don't go that extra step to then share their own development with the outside world. So before we go into the topic that we're here to discuss on networking, I was wondering if you could share a little bit with us about your intentional effort to develop your personal brand. Where did you why do you do that? Where does it come from in you? Why do you believe it's important and important enough to go out and really take that last third step, which is to share yourself with the rest of the world?
Sure, Dana. That's a wonderful introduction and a great question to begin with. I'll have to take you back to my journey of life. I grew up in India. I'm an Asian, was born and brought up in India. And I came to the US at the age of 21, right after my undergraduate degree. My Asian parents decided that I had to pursue my education further. So the decisions were made for me, and that's how I started my journey to the US. But taking you back even to my childhood, I've always been this extrovert kid, just like any other Asian who's supposed to get the top grades in school. All throughout the history, I've always been the top student in my class. And I've always loved to take charge of things, more like being responsible because I'm the elder daughter in the family. Maybe that's part of the upbringing, that you're expected to be very accountable, very responsible. Having a younger sister, I always felt that people look up to me for suggestions, for ideas, even when you're playing around in your backyard. So I think that just got ingrained into me. But the interesting fact is, being part of the millennial generation, I think being ambitious is something that's part of you. And I'm so glad that women from the past generation have paved the way for us to enjoy the freedom that we've had today, being career-oriented, whereas we can still have a personal life attached to it. And for me, the reason why I love to share more about what I'm doing is I've had to face a lot of cultural barriers. Being an Asian woman, the status quo, just being ambitious to get 2 masters, that was an uphill battle for me. But I decided this is what I want to do with my life. And then as I've nailed these small accomplishments in my life, I realized there are a lot of other women, a lot of other men who want to do things that I want to do, but maybe there's something that's holding us back. And sometimes I've realized, Dana, it's not my family or my support network. Sometimes it's me holding myself back. My vulnerabilities, the second guessing that I would do about myself. Is this the right thing? Am I in the right stage of my life? Should I be doing something else? So it took me a lot of perseverance, a lot of reflection to think about the choices that I've made in my life. And when I look back, I feel good about it. And then I thought, it's not the checkbox for me saying I've got the corner office, I've got 2 degrees, I've accomplished so much. I feel it's giving back to people and investing in others' success. At the end of the day, I realized that's exactly what would give me happiness. And I read an article by Michael Hyatt. He's a virtual mentor.
Yeah.
And he had an article about what would your eulogy be about. And I was like, I'm too young. Why am I even thinking of a eulogy? But then I realized if that was my assignment, if I had to reflect on the weekend, I did that. And I want to be remembered by people as, oh, Priyanka, she has a lot of warmth, she has a lot of grace, and she's helped me succeed. I think that's the legacy that I want to leave, which means I need to stand up sometimes and let the world know that, hey, I've been through the path, I've been vulnerable, but that's how it's going to be if you aim to achieve great things in life.
I love that. That's great. And you're telling us the story of, your own development and then your decision to share that development. And I think a lot of people have that feeling and don't necessarily act on it. So I really appreciate that you're allowing us at InPower to show people what that looks like. What does it look like when you want to turn around and give back? It doesn't always mean writing a best-selling New York Times book, which you may do. But there's a lot of ways to do it that don't have to be like that. You can do it in small ways. And this is one example of it. So I appreciate that you're sharing yourself with us in that way. And by the way, for those who haven't read Priyanka's blog piece, we have 2 of them on the site now, and she's going to become a regular blogger. So you have a chance to experience her journey on a continuing basis, including last week she wrote a blog on the subject we're going to talk about today, which is networking and why it's not always what we think it is, and why when you really go out of your way to make connections when you're networking, it really can help your career. And Priyanka, and then Mary, I want your opinion on this too, because Mary, you are someone who's both worked in organizations and outside organizations and gone back and forth, and now you're outside organizations, right? And these are big companies. These are really big companies. So just like Priyanka you know, you're not working at the small startup down the street all the time. You know, you're working at very large organizations. And it's interesting that most people think of networking as something you do to get a new job. And then when you have a job, you stop networking because it's too much work. It's hard. It's painful sometimes. And also, I think most of us have a stereotype in our mind that networking is just going to some big event where tons of people are standing around holding glasses of wine, looking for somebody to talk to that they don't know. And it just brings up this kind of negative stereotype. But I think that both of you have experiences with networking that looks very different, not only maybe in getting jobs, but also in succeeding inside large organizations or community industries. And so, Priyanka, why don't you talk about what you blogged about was great, you know, kind of your first experience with networking. Maybe you can share that with us. And then let's have a conversation about, okay, now that we've gotten over the hump and we figured out how to do it, you know, how do you continue to refine that skill to develop your career, even when you have a job?
Sure, Dana. I think the blog was a great experience for me to relive my first networking event because, as I just mentioned to you, I grew up in India. And in India, asking for help is seen as a sign of weakness. And it was a great cultural shock for me when I came here for my master's in computer science at American University. And this was in the peak of recession that I was looking for an internship or a job as I was graduating back in 2009. And I felt completely lost. I was like, what's this networking concept? It was just so new and alien to me. And I didn't have people who could help me through the process. So I wasn't sure, how do you navigate? What would the ask be? And how do you approach? Those were things that I had in mind. And I think the blog is just a great way to take me down the memory lane and go through the emotions that I experienced, which I've heard a lot of my friends resonate with. Even today, like people who have been in this country for a very long time, be it immigrants and non-immigrants, it's always the same emotional feeling that you go through. I have no idea how to network, and it's like all these people know each other when you walk into a room. But then I realized it's not about you, it's not about getting a job, though that might be the intention. But I've said this to a lot of students who are graduating. As an alumni, when I go back to American University, I've had the opportunity to go back and address the students as alumni who've been in the world. It's not about you getting a job. It's about getting to know the person, number one, and trying to help them understand the value that you bring, and then help them see, okay, I think this person has potential to work with me. I think that's the approach that's really worked for me. Let me give you an example. When I was doing the master's program, as part of my curriculum, I had the opportunity to do an internship. But then the question was, how do I approach someone for an internship, especially for someone who came here right after my undergrad. So I didn't really have any kind of real work experience except for the fact that I was in school. And I was just talking to this guy who was in my class, and we were just chit-chatting. And in general, you get to know the other person, the kind of projects that they work on. And then it occurred to me probably like 6 months after knowing this person that he is the director of the Global Technology Services for IBM. And he was doing his master's with me as well. And that was a great connection because I never asked him for a job or an internship, but things just fell into place. And then he said, you have great ability, and I think you'd be a great candidate to be on my team. And that's how he brought me into IBM as an intern. And that's when I realized, okay, this is how the world works. You need to have some common connections. So you genuinely invest in knowing the other person and give the other person a chance to know about who you are and what you are as a person. And sometimes you don't really need to have the job description that really is needed for that position. All you need is the willpower, the energy, and the enthusiasm that you bring, and the willingness to learn. And people believe in you. So it's creating that genuine trust has really helped me get started with my career. And I'm really thankful to the person who brought me into IBM. He's still my mentor. I'm still in touch. And he's seen me evolve over the last 6 or 7 years from an intern to being where I am today.
You're making a point I think is really important when it comes to networking, and then I'm going to ask Mary to show how this principle plays in her career. So get ready, Mary. But most people who are struggling with the idea of networking, they tend to think of it as transactional. Like I should be able to go to a coffee or a meetup or something like that, and then I'm going to find the person there who's going to hire me, or I'm going to find the person there who's going to, give me that next opportunity. And what you're describing is what I call it systemic, which is that you put yourself out into the world and you make the effort to make those connections like you're talking about, personal connections. And what you're doing is you're putting yourself into a system that's being created as you create it. There's not some system you go plug into. No, each network connection you make builds a system, which is your network, which connects you to all these people, so that when an opportunity can find you, now it's much shorter distance between you and the opportunity because you've got all these connections. But you can't activate that system if you don't have A, goodwill, good connections, solid connections, and B, an intention. I want an internship. When you say, I want an internship, even if you don't say it quite that directly, but, people who know you know that you're coming up in a period of time when an internship would be helpful, and you're starting to look around, or I'm thinking about, what my next job move will be, or I want to sit on the board of a nonprofit, that would be helpful. Whatever it is, if you have an intention and you begin to articulate that to your network, to the system, and if you've built good, solid connections, it's almost like you could just imagine a network lighting up, going, okay, get Priyanka an internship. And all of a sudden these zing, 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 your network just starts to connect, and it's not very much work for them. They're like, oh, I like Priyanka. Oh, internship. Let me think. Oh yeah, I know Joe, or I have a need, or whatever. And so it's not transactional at all. It's systemic. And each time you have an intention, you drop it into your network, that system lights up to try to help you achieve that intention. And it very rarely feels transactional. It usually feels much more like, oh, I mentioned this 2 weeks ago to Bob, and now Susan, who doesn't know Bob, is offering me this opportunity. Did they connect out in the world? Maybe, maybe not. It doesn't matter. But the minute you drop your intention into the network that you've built, that's when things start to come back to you. At least that's my experience of it, and that's how I think about it. And is that track with what you're saying?
If I can add to that, it's building those meaningful connections. And when I look at any person that I meet for the first time, I'm like, I want to meet this person again. It's more about the long-lasting connections that I'm looking at. As you rightly pointed out, I'm not looking for short-term connections. First, I see what I can offer for them, and that's how most of the meaningful connections happen. So it's never about, I need something, and sometimes I don't even realize if I would need something. But when I open up my network to somebody else, or if I just go out of my way and say, hey, I really love what you're doing. Can I help you with something on those lines? Here are some ideas. If you're willing to do it, I just do it on a collaborative pro bono basis for somebody else that I meet. And then probably they see the goodwill in them, and they say like, oh, Priyanka, help me with this. So maybe if there's something that I can do for you, that's how most of my tangible connections have formed. It's never about, I need to do a coffee chat. I'm more about, this is what I can offer you, and if you're interested, we can do a coffee chat. I think it's more about packaging that connection in the right way, be it an introduction, or I'm always thinking about, if I meet someone, it's about whom can I connect this person within my network so that these both would find the connection useful. And that's a strategy that I've followed very consciously for the last couple of years, because I know that I'm in this industry for the long run, which means I need to build solid connections on one side of it, but that's not my aim. I'm more looking at how can I help others succeed. And by the way, if there's something that can be of value to my career, that would help as well. And that basically boils down to being confident about who you are. And once you get that straight, I don't think that there's any kind of fear that you can hold yourself back about.
So let me just say, we've got some viewers out there. If anybody, we have about 10 minutes left. So if anybody wants to come in and join the conversation, now's the time. Mary, what's your take on this whole thing? How do you see networking working in your world?
Yes, I agree with everything that's been said so far. There's a part, Dana, I'm going to get to in a minute about being inside an organization and networking, because I have interesting experiences with that. But everything that you both have been saying, like Priyanka and Dana, just to like kind of build upon what you were saying, I worked on this app for networking. It was this guy in Dallas. He knew everyone, seriously, like everybody. And that's where he was telling me that everyone's got it wrong with networking, that it's not the transactional, like you're saying, right? It's not you give to get, you give.
Right.
And that's it. The rest will tend to follow, but you give. He's like, that's how this works. And he did that. Like, he would offer people like connections and how to help them. And that was always the first thing that went through his head. So it was really great working with him because I've learned like a bunch. And then what I've found, though, where it gets a little different is working inside an organization. I refer to it on my, like, what I do as squirreling around. But it's not really that. It really is getting to know different people in the organization, what people do, and highlight and try to bring out what they do more. And because they need to help me a lot of times get stuff done. So I'm like kind of surfing the organization, so to speak. Like, if someone can't help me, then who can help me to get this done? And most people I find are very agreeable and they all want to help. No one wants anyone in an organization, I think, to not succeed. That gets in it, getting into serious dysfunction. But my experience has been, in general, people want projects and everyone to succeed.
I add here, Dana.
Yeah, go ahead.
And the way I see building these meaningful connections is twofold. One is within your organization. We work for big organizations. So maybe even if it's a small organization, we don't get a chance to work with everybody in the organization, but there might be some overarching goal that you're working on that's across the institution. And I think that's another way in which, A, you get more visibility, and B, you're helping somebody else in a very different division succeed, but that's tying back to the mission of the organization. And that's something that I love doing. I think for me, it comes very naturally. I'm an extrovert. I like just stopping by people's office and meeting new people in the elevator. You wouldn't imagine that most of the connections that I've made, even in my organization, these are people that I would never work with on a regular basis, but friends that you keep making just by running into them in the hallway or the cafeteria, but just having that warmth and the smile and making the others feel comfortable. I think that's how most of my connections have happened. And that's something that I would suggest all of us to do. Just take a day, a few minutes off of Friday, just walk by a different department or see somebody at the cafeteria, you run into them often. Just stop by, say hello, here's my name, and what do you do? Which division are you? And those real icebreakers have helped me work on projects that I'm quite sure would have never happened at my door if I was just waiting for them to happen. Yeah. So that's one aspect of it. And the other is learning from people who come from different walks of lives. And most of my network is not really IT or management focused. I have people who come from different industries that I wouldn't really be thinking of. This is going to be a valuable connection. But then it helps me be part of the learning curve, because as a leader, you have to keep thinking differently, and you can't really be siloed into this industry or this particular mission of the organization. So recently, I just ran into another person, Monica Can. She is the CEO and founder of Innovators Box, and it's an organization that helps you unleash creativity. And I was at an event, and I picked up something which might be of help to our audiences as well. She has these cards called Spark cards. Basically, it helps to spark a conversation. And here's one that I got. What's the best advice that you've ever received? So these are kinds of things that I like picking up, and maybe these would be cue cards when you're meeting people. The first question is, okay, what do I talk? I have no idea. I don't work in the domain. I don't want to do it. So I think something like this really helps me think about new ways in which I can continue to network effectively. And we can send a link around if anybody's interested in taking a look at it. But these are the kinds of things that you would run into if you continue to meet and nurture relationships with people outside of your industry or outside of your domain. And most of the times, people are happy to meet you for 10 minutes. That's the minimum ask that I would say. And I would give them first something before I ask them for something, as Mary mentioned. I thought that was a thing that would really help our readers think about as well.
Yeah, two things I want to pick up that you both said. First of all, Mary, the guys, it's just about giving. I think that's good advice, but I would change it just a little bit. It's not about give to get, it's about give and get, but those things are not necessarily connected. If you're keeping giving, then when you have an ask, then your network, as Priyanka demonstrated, people want to help you if you've been helping them, or at least offering to help. And so if you give, now I ask, the network is very predisposed to want to help you, and it's not a lot of effort on your part or theirs. And that's one of the things that's so cool about networking when you're doing it regularly, inside and out, is that if you're doing it regularly, and this is the other thing, it's not about going once every 6 months to a cocktail party.
Right.
It's as Priyanka said, in the elevator, in the cafeteria, you go to a meetup, and if you're just making the effort to do that on any kind of a regular basis, you begin to develop these connections, and then you can decide which ones. My theory is, if I offer to help somebody, if they offer back, and that's how you find out if there's energy. Some of these network connections just kind of drift away and die, but they come back 3 years later. You run into them at a event, or they call you out of the blue, or they find you on LinkedIn, and all of a sudden it kicks up again. It's not necessarily like every person you talk to, you have to be making this deep investment in. You're just making a regular investment of your energy and time. And so what I do is I try to allocate so much energy, so many hours per week, or just my own personal energy, to just being constantly touching my network in one way or another, either as it's asking me for things, or as I'm asking for things. And putting things out on social media is a great way to let people see what you're up to. I continually have people say, my God, you're all over my LinkedIn feed, but I love everything you post. And I'm like, I don't even remember who you are, but I'm really glad you know who I am. The other thing I wanted to mention, by the way, as far as internal networking, so Sheryl Sandberg's book was great for a lot of reasons, but what I think one of the most powerful things that she talked about was the difference between the ladder and the jungle gym as far as career development. So it's not always about just going higher and higher and higher. Sometimes you have to go sideways to get higher, and sometimes you go sideways because you're as high as you want to be, but you want to have continually to be developing your career. And it's so important to go sideways, because if you want to go up, the higher you get, the more breadth of responsibility and authority you need, and the more they need you to have broken out of those silos you're talking about, Priyanka. And so getting an assignment overseas, getting an assignment in a different kind of group, either on a temporary or permanent basis, is so important to building the kind of portfolio that's going to get you into higher levels of leadership. And there's no way to get sideways without networking, because otherwise you put yourself in that silo. So whether it's internal to your company or your industry, when you think about career development as going around the jungle gym, networking is the primary way to do it. It certainly worked that way for me. And, I got opportunities to take temporary assignments inside a huge organization that I never would have if I just stuck to my job. And it was a lot of fun, and it got me exposed to other kinds of opportunities as a result.
Right. Dan, if I could quickly add, I think when you want to be seen as a leader, you have to live as a leader. And I love reading biographies of successful or unsuccessful CEOs, because I love to learn from their life experiences. And one thing that I've always thought about is, how do you stay very accessible to the people on the front line? Which means you have to know a lot of people, and as you keep climbing the ladder, sideways or laterally, you become more inaccessible to the actual folks who understand your business and who are facing your customers. So I think networking is a great way to get the pulse of your consumers, your audience, whoever they are, and to stay in touch as to what's happening. And that way you make more meaningful decisions as part of your decision process. So that's an added incentive that will help you as you're thinking about your career trajectory, maybe 20 years down the line. People would remember you by the stories, the warmth, the hospitality that you provide, and not by the protocols and the policies that you're going to enforce on them. That's my philosophy that I think about.
I think you're right on that. And what's occurring to me, let's make a note. Mary, you were asking me about future topics. Mm-hmm. I think it would be really fun to continue this conversation about the logistics. Like, what's a good use of LinkedIn versus the cocktail party versus, finding people in the hall? Like, what are tips and tricks that are easy to do, that doesn't feel like a lot of work to be able to continually nurture your network? And then how do you tell that you have a good network? It's one thing to do all this stuff, but what's the performance metric here? How do you know that you have a network that's really working for you? I think that would be an interesting follow-up conversation to do with Priyanka, and maybe there's somebody else we can think of.
Yeah, and I'm going through that process myself. I haven't named it yet, but I think I'm doing a good job of whatever little connections that I'm building. And I think it's more about staying very disciplined and organized as you're building these connections. The way you use LinkedIn or your calendars to keep in touch with everybody else. And I'm happy to share things that work for me and things probably that aren't working the way they're supposed to be, and maybe somebody else out that I can learn from.
That would be great, because I'm coming to a place where I'm not being very organized about it, but it's still working. So we could have a conversation about the organized approach and the not organized approach. Although that's a great. I'm selling some of what I'm doing.
Hey, but do you want to open it up to our viewers to see if they have any questions?
Do we have anyone that has any questions? We're right at our half-hour time.
Maybe if they have some feedback on what we could have done differently, maybe there are things that we should have touched on. I think that would be great for us to get some insights as well.
Well, I think, do we have anyone that tried to get in, Mary?
No.
Okay, so let's do this. We're right at our half-hour end of our coffee break. So let's close it off and invite people to go to coffeebreak.InPowerCoaching.com to continue the conversation. We have forums there. This event is on a blog post we have conversation topics under. And Priyanka, I want to invite you to write another blog post about more of the logistics of networking that are working for you, and then let's schedule another one of these to have part 2 about, well, how do you really do this? Because there are a lot of different approaches, and different people have different approaches. And I think if people hear how, what's the organized approach, what's the unorganized approach, hopefully they'll get some ideas themselves for what they're already doing, they can keep doing, and how to expand on that.
That sounds great. And I'm quite sure once I'm on your radar, I'm going to be a writer for you for life. That's the vibe that I get from you. So.
Oh yeah, we're not letting you go. Awesome. Well, I want to thank everybody who listened in live, and for those who are going to be listening in on the recording, we will still be here to continue this conversation on this topic via the forums at coffeebreak.InPowerCoaching.com, and look forward to Priyanka's next event with us.
Thank you so much, Dana, and thank you, Mary, as well, for the wonderful opportunity to share my life experiences. And I'm happy to write more and hopefully get more feedback from people on what is it that's working for them and things that they would love for us to share more about.
Good. Awesome. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great week.
Thanks. Bye.